Let me clap first. Oh, boobs.
Hi everyone, welcome.
Hello.
Welcome to Once Upon a Mental Crisis. It is I, your host, Xai Moore, and the co-host,
May See.
Woo! Well, welcome back. This is episode 3 of Once Upon a Mental Crisis. Time to check in.
Oh yes, check in. As you can see, we are in a new spot. This is Zai's office, so we moved it from the living room to here. It's just to, test things out, experiment a little. So yeah.
Yeah, so any feedback is much appreciated.
We're still working on it.
Yes.
Geez, we just got done with May. May was a very harsh month for the both of us. I think we're still trying to recover.
For sure.
I think it's just like work related, a lot of family, a lot of Pluto was in retrograde.
Yes. A lot of personal, like, reflecting and just, I guess for me, just a lot of uncertainties. Yeah. But following up with our last episode, though, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Okay. So,
Which was on friendship.
yeah.
Yes.
So how are you feeling about your friendships now?
Yeah, in general, it's like we just go day by day, and it's just like roller coasters, highs and lows. And I felt like last month, I feel like there are other priorities. I feel like I haven't been thinking about friendships. I just like do the best that I can.
Yeah.
So,
True.
Yeah. What about you?
No, same. I feel like we had so much stuff going on in May that it is just what it is, and you just take one day at a time. So again, thank you guys for tuning in. We have a very special episode for you guys today. We're gonna dive deep, as if we haven't dove deep before.
But yes, it is June, so welcome to June. It is the month of Father's Day, so we thought that it'd be great to talk about our fathers, as we both have lost our fathers.
Yeah.
So
Here's our tissue right here.
oh my god. I totally forgot about that. So yeah. Zai, let's talk about, we can start with you and remembering your father then.
Okay. So my dad. Oh my god, I didn't even think about what I wanted to talk about my dad.
Yeah,
But,
we can share stories
Yeah.
and just memories about our fathers. They're both Hmong fathers, by the way. Yeah.
yeah. Our Hmong fathers. We do not have the same father, by the way.
I shouldn't have not said that. It may confuse people. Okay.
My dad is someone very special to me because we shared a lot of similarities. Even though I am the daughter, like a lot of people may think that daughters and fathers don't share a bond or they're very different, but I think it's quite different for me and my dad. We were very different, but also very similar in a lot of ways. My dad, he was very business savvy. So he was very much an entrepreneur. Anything that he thought would help like his business or like help improve his income, he would try to do it. So he always was very money savvy and like business savvy. I'm not money savvy. That's one thing that I didn't take from him, meaning I'm not very good with money. I know how to spend it for sure, but I don't know how to save it. Oh my god, this chair creaking is gonna kill me.
Just don't move.
But yeah, so a lot of my memories with my dad is him going on business trips, whether he was selling life insurance, selling like some kind of medicine, some kind of subscription business, whatever. He was always trying to do something to help his family and improve his financial well-being. And if he's not doing that, then he's at home. And when he was at home, he was always doing something. He was always like fixing something, some kind of home improvement. One special memory that I remember with him is we were sitting. It was my dad's first house that he ever bought. We were sitting at the basement stairs, and he was fixing the handrail. And I don't know where my brothers were, but this was a common thing. I was always, not always, but often, I was helping my dad with these handy things. So I know how to screw a nail or two. I know how to use a hammer and stuff like that. But yeah, so we were sitting there fixing the handrail, and of course he was doing most of like the handiwork, but I was like just keeping him company and talking to him and like giving him the things that he needed, and it became a very like intimate moment between us because my dad, he also loves to talk. Like if you knew my dad, he would tell you stories. So many stories. He had his own like YouTube channel like a few years before he passed away. Yeah, he did.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and his channel was Uncle Jean. yeah, because his purpose was to not purpose, but his like mindset was like he was telling stories to like the young kids.
Aww.
Yeah.
Wow. He was creative.
Yeah. So, yeah, he vlogged. He like did podcasts like this. Of course, it was a little different, but yeah, he made money off of YouTube, guys.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is this love?
I believe so. So I could probably show it to you and pull it up. Yeah.
How cute.
Yeah, so yeah, in that moment my dad just starts talking about like his childhood and how he grew up, and then it got to his mom. And his mom is always a very touchy subject because he basically told me how he found out that she passed away. So she was very sick. I believe she had some kind of cancer. Of course, you know, it was many years ago, and the medical field wasn't that great, especially for us Hmong refugees.
In a third world country.
Yeah, exactly. And they were in Laos back then, so this was even before the war. And Laos, of course, was a poor third world country, and you know, we don't know what she was sick with, but we knew that she was sick. And he said he was just like this little boy, I think 5 or 6, and he just remembered someone coming to his school in his classroom and telling him that his mom passed away. And like the way he described the devastation was so detailed and descriptive, especially in Hmong words. You know, if you know Hmong and you know how like endearing some Hmong terms can be, like the way he described it, the devastation of learning that his mom passed away and he wasn't there to see. He told me that he ran home crying, and when he got there she was gone, and like that stuck with him forever because then he became a son, a child with no mother. He was very young. I think my dad is the 3rd oldest. Despite being like the middle child, my father became more of a leader for the family. And that's something I took away from my dad too. Is like he was a very like authoritative person, like both in good and bad ways. But he taught me what leadership was about, and he was a very good example because as I grew up, he was also in the Yang clan, where he was also a leader in our family. So a lot of people looked up to him and like would ask him for advice and things like that. And it was just really cool to know that my dad was someone who was respected. And he was a teacher when he was from a very like young age, like a teenager. So he was like
in Laos or here?
In Thailand.
Okay.
Yeah, so after the war, and he was in a refugee camp, he was the youngest of the men to take the exam to become a teacher. And he passed, and that was like one of the greatest joy for him because he was the youngest. A lot of people didn't think that he would pass, but he did, and he was a very good teacher as well. He really loved teaching, and these are just things that I really remember about my dad. It's
So
just
your dad was pretty well educated in Laos and Thailand then?
oh yeah, he spoke Laotian, he spoke Thai. He of course he learned English when we came to America, and I feel like he was a very well-rounded person. Like he was always learning, and even though things were very hard for him, obviously he really persevered because the most important thing to him was he didn't want to live in poverty anymore. Right. So yeah, those are my fondest memory. Although like he was crying as he was telling me this, and because I'm an empath, I cried with him. Even though this is kind of like a sad memory, it's also like a very endearing and touching story. Yeah.
I feel like that's the most vulnerable parts that your dad was willing to share with you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I feel like most dads don't, but my dad was a very emotional person, so I really enjoyed that about him. What about your dad?
My dad, he was actually like born into like a military family. So my dad has like probably as young as 14 or so, he was like enlisted into the army, or he joined, and it's like the Hmong CIA. It's like a very secret army, so it's not like your typical US military.
Yeah.
But yeah, he would like growing up, he was very proud of being part of the CIA, because he would like, when we do like photo shoots, like he'd always wear his like uniform. Eventually there was like this, okay, it's a very scandalous, but in our community there was a time where this person like established this little organization or activity for teens to be a part, like to get like a test feel of like the military. So like my brothers joined that, and like my dad was like very supportive, so, like, because he wanted them to see. But there was a time where like my cousin and my brothers did that, and I remember he was like very proud, and like my dad, like he would like relive his like military days and like just memories and stuff. I just remember him like running drills or something at home and stuff, but it's really funny. But my dad is a very cultured man. He was very involved in the Hmong community as well, and in our clan as well. Like to the point where like I would hear stories where like he would have debates with like relatives about like what is the correct way of doing things and stuff. Like he really stood to his ground. I guess growing up also, I lived in Green Bay, where my grandpa was in a different city, so like I didn't really grew up with my grandpa, my paternal grandpa, but I grew up with my paternal grandma. My dad really loved my grandma. We always took care of her, and she took care of us too. But my dad in general was a very quiet man. He always said that he wasn't the smartest student, so that's why he got enrolled into like the military, compared to his brother, who was actually a very bright student. He like succeeded in school and stuff, but unfortunately he died during the war too. So my dad is actually the oldest in his family, and he actually has a small family. He has like 3 sisters and 1 brother, but he always like desired for like a bigger family, because you know, like the more brothers you have, the more support and stuff. But I always like felt the sadness of my dad. I remember not always I made my dad seem like an alcoholic, but no, he's not always drunk, but when he is drunk, he's very emotional, and his sadness comes out, and he would always cry. But I guess like my dad has also been very like hard worker in our lives. Like my parents, we grew up in like an agricultural family, so like every summer we always were at the gardens and the farms, and like I could see how hardworking my dad was, and like my parents were were a team, and although they, you know, like argued here and there, like typical parents do, like they were always a team and helping each other. But some of my fondest memories of my dad is like he would always take us to school, like without a doubt. Like he took every single one of us to school, even my nieces and nephews took them to school. Even when we're all graduated, he took them to the very last like grandchild, he like took them to school. some of our like memories that I share with my sisters that like sometimes our dad would like tie her hair, but like he would use like rubber bands or something, but also like his hands are so rough, so like we didn't like it when he tied her hair, but like the fact that he brushed and tied her hair is like some of our fondest memories. One of my favorite memories of my dad though is like when we went to the Milwaukee Zoo and there were like pink flamingos. And I was like, oh my god, like those pink flamingos, they're so pink. He's all like, and I don't know why, but he is such a skeptic. He'll be like, oh, those are fake. They just painted them pink. I'm like, what the heck? Where did my dad come from? But I think I'm really thankful for my dad because he really taught me how to appreciate my culture. He was really supportive. He never really like made me feel as if I was like restricted. Like my mom was more the person who was traditional and she was like very strict, but my dad, he allowed so much freedom, and I'm thankful that like my dad made me feel safe my whole life. Like my whole life we only had one argument, like really bad argument, but other than that, like I'm blessed and fortunate to have a dad who made me feel safe. Because that also plays a part in how we choose our partners, you know? Mm-hmm. And he really taught me how to appreciate culture and, like, to appreciate my roots. Like, I always said that my dad gave me my roots. And not a lot of people can say that, especially as a Hmong woman. In the Hmong culture, it's so, like sexist. It's very, like, oppressive for women. But, like, my dad made me feel really proud and that I could do anything. So, and also I am my dad's third daughter. So there's 5 girls. I would say my oldest sister was the closest to my dad. You know, she was the first daughter. Well, technically second, but because the first one passed away at a young age. I think that like my oldest sister and him have a much closer bond. I am more of my mother's daughter, but even my younger sister, the one after me, my dad loved her, like, and my sister loved my dad more than my mom. So, yeah. And it's interesting because, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but it's interesting that I found more things about my dad even after he passed away from my mom. So,
I know, it's similar.
Yeah.
Well, I forgot to mention that my dad, we're from a military family too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so my grandfather was a general.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And my dad was also in the military, and there were like times when my parents were already married and like they already had my brothers, and this is a special memory that my mom just told me after my dad passed away.
Right? Like, these stories comes after they pass away. It's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's because now that they're grieving, our parents, our mom is grieving too, and like she's remembering past memories, but she told me how she told my dad that she was pregnant with me.
Aww.
Yeah. And she was like, he was gone doing his military duty wherever, and like sending things to them back and forth and letters and things like that was really hard, because they could only do that if there was like a messenger, you know, coming back and forth. And she found someone, and she like, I don't remember the exact details now, but she like he had left these shoes, and he had sent a messenger a message asking her to pack his shoes for him, and so when the messenger would come, he could like bring it back to him.
Okay.
And so she grabbed the shoes and she packed it up, and then she wrote like a little note and put it in the shoe to tell him that she was pregnant with me.
Oh, this is in Thailand.
Yeah, this is in Thailand. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm like, wait. I forgot you were born there.
Yeah, I was born in Thailand. Yeah, so this was back in Thailand, and so like she did that, and then when he, she said when he received it, he was so happy, and that he sent a letter back saying how happy he was and like how excited he was to be coming home.
Aww,
yeah,
that's so sweet.
It is really sweet, and I think it's the sweetest because, you know, I'm his only daughter, and to know how much I was loved was it feels really good to know how much I was loved. Yeah. Well, I guess we can go on to like discuss like the impact of having our fathers in our life. You know, we kind of already talked about what kind of values they instilled, But I kind of want to go into the relationship I had with my father in my like teenage and adulthood years.
For sure.
Yeah, because I felt like we had like a volatile relationship. Because when you mentioned that you and your dad only had one argument, me and my dad had several. Because my dad was more traditional. I mean, he was cultured as well. Like, he liked learning about other like cultures and like learning new things, but he was also very traditional. And so I grew up, well, he tried to instill the mindset of being like a dutiful daughter-in-law into me. And for many of you guys, you should know that I don't have that kind of mindset.
She's completely opposite.
Yes. I go against the grain 100%.
She's a modern gal.
I am. I very... and that's where we clashed a lot, was because I just wanted... I wish I had freedom, you know? Like, I wish I had the choice to go hang out with my friends.
Well, it's difficult, too, when we have a dual identity, as among American.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, my dad, he put me in public school. No, not public school. Private school. He put me in private school. So the only people in private school are, like, white people and, like, maybe some other cultures. So, like, I only knew, like, the American culture. And then the Hmong culture was at home. But of course the Hmong culture doesn't vibe well with the new American culture, where it's all about freedom and like having a voice and things like that.
Yeah, or individualism and stuff. Yeah.
Right. Which was so ironic to me now that I think about it, is because he would try to instill like how to be a traditional like housewife and like take care of your family and stuff like that, but he would also like support me if I wanted to be a leader. I'm like, how can you support two sides that don't really like work together?
Right. But I think because he probably sees himself in you.
Yeah.
You know, like the qualities of a leader, like very entrepreneurial, very like, I mean, like this a boss woman.
Right.
You know?
Right. Well, true. And like, I'm not saying that you can't do both. Like, obviously I am trying my hardest to do both right now, trying to like take care of my family. You know, I myself still believe that as a mother and as a wife, I should take care of my family, but that's not my sole responsibility, right? Like, my identity is elsewhere as well. So my only thing, I guess the biggest thing is I wish I had learned how to balance both, instead of trying to feel like I had to fight for either one.
That too.
Yeah.
On to our fathers. We'll talk about those things next time.
But that's one of the things that, you know, I had to fight against. Like, that was the impact in my life because of him. Was like, you know, he created like a hard growing, to me it felt like he created a hard growing atmosphere for me. Like, I didn't know which identity to choose.
For sure.
Yeah. But despite all that, of course,
but like learning how to blend it in.
Exactly.
You know, blend them together and stuff.
Exactly. But yeah, but despite all that, I knew that my father loved me, and I think that's what was most important to me, because despite it all, he still like let me live it under his house. He still fed me, he still clothed me, and when I married my husband, he still supported that marriage.
It's really good.
Yeah.
I guess the impact of my father, well, I kind of briefly mentioned it, but I think like my father was such a quiet man, so it's really hard to think about like what stood out. Like, he was supportive, but he was like very quiet. He's like, when I think to him, I used to think of him as like a tree or like a shadow. Like, he's just there. Like, he didn't really have a say. And my mom was more vocal in our family.
I've heard her mom. Yeah, she is.
But yeah, like I said, my dad taught me very great values of like family, culture. When I told him that I was actually studying to become like a cultural anthropologist, he was like really supportive, and like just emphasizing how important the Hmong culture was and to like keep that going.
So here comes the hardest part of our podcast.
Yeah.
Is sharing how our fathers passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And it still feels very recent to me.
Mm-hmm.
For her, it's like
Very recent.
very recent, yeah.
But that just shows how, like, grief, no matter what, it will always be there.
Yeah.
It's, even though it happens 10, 20 years ago, it's still something very hard to talk about. Like, even my mom, who's in her 70s, she lost her mother at a very young age, at 5. And she, to this day, she still talks about that, you know, so.
Yeah, same with my
Yeah.
dad, you know, like, he grieved my grandmother for a very, like, until his
Last breath.
last breath.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
Well, since your dad was the first one to go. Sorry.
Wow.
I don't know, but I mean, I could talk about it.
No, that's okay. No, it's fine. Well, not briefly, but I have already made a few episodes on my dad passing. So he passed away from COVID. It was late 2020. One of the things that is most upsetting is right as they were talking about coming out with the vaccine. My family had already gotten sick, and my dad was already in the hospital. Like, we were denying it, but we knew that he was going to pass. Like, he had been in the hospital for like 3 weeks by then.
Oh, wow.
Maybe even less. But it was then, now the beginning of 2021, and they were talking about like creating the vaccine and the race to do the vaccine, right? And we were like, if only the vaccine had come out sooner, we would have gotten both of our parents on it, and maybe that would have helped. But of course, that's the process of grieving too, which I'll go into.
The what ifs.
Yeah. But basically, my brothers got COVID, then everyone else in the house got COVID because they all lived together at that time, and my dad was already kind of sickly at that time. So when my brother measured his oxygen level, it was very low, and then they took him to hospital, and then he never came back. It was a very long process of waiting to see if he was going to be okay or not. And ultimately, he was not okay. The hardest part was watching my mom deal with it, because they've been married for so many years. They've gone through so many things together, but she couldn't be with him for those 3 weeks that he was in the hospital. It was only up till like the last week that they would let her in. Yeah, and it wasn't until the last week that they let her in, and even then it could only be 1 or 2 visitors, so our family had to choose who could go visit him. Of course, my mom. And then they would put her in this like whole like hazmat outfit. Yeah, and so she couldn't even like touch him. She could only just like stand there and like just talk to him and let him know that she was there. And then when the doctors like had a really strong feeling that he was just on life support at this point, and that we had to make a decision whether to pull the plugs or not. And I think for me at that point, I had already started grieving. So I kind of already knew that it was going to happen. And I, at that time, and still kind of now, I kind of like hated myself for feeling that way, because I felt like I should have been more hopeful. But at the same time, I was like, there's no point of being hopeful, because I already knew that he wasn't going to make it.
And I think your body just knows.
Yeah.
I truly believe in that.
Yeah. And like when we had finally made the decision to pull the plug, we talked about, all the options and what could happen. We talked about it, but in my head I was like, I was not optimistic about it, which is odd because I'm normally an optimistic person. But yeah, so we went in the next day and we all said our goodbyes, and I just remember sitting next to him and just feeling him and touching him, and we just knew that his soul wasn't there anymore. Like, I could feel like he just wasn't there. And when they pulled the plug, you could just see his breath, like, fade away. And that moment is still very clear in my head. It was a very, like, it's a hard to describe watching someone you love so much pass away. Yeah. It's a feeling that is something that I don't wish anyone to feel. But unfortunately, you know, life and death happens, and it happened a lot sooner than I anticipated. I think at that moment, I already knew that I needed to start processing everything, and that I needed to focus on my mom. Yeah, that's my dad passing away, and that was 3 years ago.
Anything else? That's it. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
That was hard to rewalk back into that. So, your hands are warm, by the way.
I am a very warm person.
Okay, so my dad literally passed away last year. But it was like a slow, gradual, I suppose, because let's say I moved back home in 2016, and then that year, the next year in 2017, he started having health issues. I think at first it was his psoriasis. So that was something new, completely new to us. Like, his skin just started like flaring up and then flaking away. And also through that time, you could feel and see that his mind wasn't completely there anymore. Like, he would become very OCD, and he would move things around and like forget where they were. And so that like caused a lot of drama in our family, actually. It was crazy. Yeah, like, you could just see the changes in my dad as a part of it being in his old age. He was definitely in his 70s then. I think in 2018 is when we threw, or 2017 also is when we threw my parents their anniversary and my dad's like 72nd birthday or something. So it was nice that we were able to celebrate the both of them, because they are so hardworking, and it was much deserved. But yeah, he was going through a lot of health issues, and then he was also diagnosed with I'm not sure, it's like not inanimate, but like unactivated like tuberculosis or something. So it was like, it's the tuberculosis that's not activated. It's just there. It's just dormant. So my dad was going through that, and it was very hard, because like this is psoriasis. Like, we don't know how to cure it. There is no cure, basically. It's an autoimmune disease, and all you could do is like take steroids for your skin. However, in 2020, he had a stroke, and that was what turned for the worst. And it's in the middle of the pandemic, so when it happened, we didn't know what was going on, because like we just remember that day that he went outside and he came back in, and he was just sitting in the living room, and you could see he was so confused. Like, his head was shaking, like something's wrong. And he couldn't really function or walk correctly, so we kind of carried him into the room, and then he wasn't getting better. I was like asking him questions, and we're like, okay, no, we need to call the cop. Like, we need to call an ambulance, because this is not normal. Like, and also I think this is one of our first. We never had like a stroke in our family, like evidently, like there in front of us. So we didn't know how to deal with it, how to prepare for it. And so the ambulance came, and then they took him, and then obviously pandemic, you can't really know visitors. But once he got the clear, I was one of the first that actually went to see my dad in the hospital. And you know, sometimes you think about like, why me? Why was it me? Because it was like literally I was the first one to be hit with the blow, where like I asked him who he was or if he remembered me, and he didn't. And like, to have your dad, someone you love, not remember you is one of the hardest things. But eventually he got his memories back, he started speaking English too when the doctors asked him in like in English too. So it's like, and also by the way, I cope with humor, so you'll hear me, joke here and there, but that's just how I cope with things, is how my family copes with things. But I got to see him and communicate that with my mom. And also this was a hard time for me and my mom because my mom's fears and her anxiety and her anxiousness, and I couldn't give her all the answers. Like, we butted heads so many times during that. I'm like, I can't convince you how to calm down. Like, I can't help you the way I want to. I know you're scared, but this is all I know. And she was like frustrated with me, but it's like, how can I don't know what else to do. But eventually, I think my dad was like in the hospital for a month before he was cleared, and then all the necessary like physical therapy and the training and stuff, he was able to come home. And even then, when he was home, it was just so hard adjusting because I think his right side was like completely dead, but he could still function on one side of his body. So like he could still like feed himself, but it was so much harder to walk. And so it was years and like months and years of just him, of us like taking care of him. We became his caretakers. But then, parents are so independent. Like, my dad would try to walk on his own, but so many times where he fell and you couldn't do anything but just pick him back up. Like, going to the bathroom was hard. Washing him was difficult. And when I think about all of this, it's even after he passed, like, I'm not sad that he passed. I am really relieved that he's no longer suffering. But when I think about my dad, I cry a lot because I think of the last few years he lived, and it's just sad because it's like your whole life you see your parents as hard workers, refugees.
Yeah.
Like, you went through war and all these things. You created a life with your family. You flourished in this new country, and then in the end, you're hit with a stroke. Like, it's crazy how life can be so unfair sometimes. I mean, you see your parent in this light. But of course, he, dealt with stroke for like good 3 years, and then his health was just declining. He still had cirrhosis, and then eventually he started eating less, drinking less, and then I think the beginning of 2023, sorry. Oh my goodness. Like, he was bedridden for the first 3 years. For the first 2 months of 2023. And at that time, I was also really like struggling at work where I wasn't happy myself. I've been working at this office job for 3 years or so. And then I finally found a new job, which is my current job. But that also entailed me to move out to a different city. And in the middle of it all, I had to leave my parents and my family. And I knew it was so heartbreaking because it was the middle where my dad's health was declining. And I felt like if I abandoned him, that like I was a most horrible person. But generally, my family were really supported. I was just really worried that like if I left, no one would love my parents more than I did. But like sometimes you just have to choose yourself. And I remember the night before I left, I hugged my dad, and I just told him like, hey, I found a new job. I'm gonna be moving, but I'll come back. God always love you. And I remember that night I just came home and cried. I went to my room and just cried and cried and cried because I knew like what that meant. And like it was just like my body telling me that this might be the end, and like just like mourning. And also like when my dad had his stroke, that was when I started mourning too. Like I started grieving my dad because like my dad is no longer the same. Like, and you could tell in the household, like in the house, like we no longer had a patriarchal figure, and my mom was the one who really held it all together. And my mom had to be the mother and father. You know, like, I feel so bad for my mom because without my dad, like, with the father figure, the household was really weak and we didn't have things together. Like, no one was fixing the pipes and no one was, like, fixing or doing the home maintenance anymore. You could just see, like, it's, like, metaphorically but also physically, the home was just, like, deteriorating in itself. And that's all, like, the impact of having, like, no father figure. But the night I just cried and cried and cried. And then I moved down here to a new city. And then 2 days, well, the night before, the family wrote, like, hey, my dad's in the hospital. I'm like, okay, like, just keep us updated. And then I went to sleep. And then the next morning I woke up like at 8 a.m. And my nephew texted all of us that Grandpa has passed away. And I couldn't even be there. I texted my manager and just, like, drove home. And I went to the hospital and I just cried and cried. And as long as I got to see his body laying there. And it's been over a year now since that happened. And I think for a while I blamed myself too, like, did I ruin my family? I lived with this, like, guilt that the reason why I left is the reason why my dad died. But, you know, thankfully a lot of my family and friends were very supportive of me, encouraging, like, no, like, we think, like, it was your time's dad to go. And I'm happy because, like, he's no longer suffering. And that's all that matters, you know. And he lived his life. And I know that he's proud of me, and he's, like, the fact that I was able to move on with his life. Maybe he waited until that so he can go too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's losing someone is never easy. And I think that first year of grieving is definitely the hardest because you go through all the what ifs. You question yourself a lot, and I think for me, of course, you know, so I actually remember right before they got sick, it's so odd. It's almost like my dad knew that his end was coming.
Yeah.
And he said it was snowing, and we just had, like, a big snowstorm in Milwaukee, and he said he sent me a messenger. He's like, come have a snowball fight with me. And I said that I couldn't because we were being so careful with COVID. Like, Ty and I, we were being so careful with COVID. And I told him that I couldn't because someone was sick or something. And I, you know, as much as I wanted to, I couldn't. And he's like, he was very sad when I said when I told him that I couldn't come over. And he said, I just wanted to let you know. I just wanted to invite you before I pass away, and then you won't.
Which is a very common thing that, like, parents say all the time too.
It was like, you know, this is your last chance, and it really was my last chance. And did I regret it? Of course I did. You know, like, that was literally the last chance that I could see him alive, because the next time I saw him was through a video screen. A Zoom call. That's the only way I could see him in the hospital. Was we would park in the hospital parking lot, and the nurses would set up a Zoom call, and all I saw was my dad sleeping because they had put him in an induced coma in hopes that, you know, his body would recover. But having that thought and then being there while he passed away was another process in itself. So I'm a very superstitious person. I don't know what to think about this, but remembering his body was terrifying for me. It was traumatic for the whole family, and it was very traumatic for me, my mom, and my sister-in-law. Like, we had nightmares afterwards, and that feels horrible to say because I just lost my dad. Why am I scared of him now? But because we're so superstitious, we believe that the spirit still lingers around even after death, and that for the next like 3 months, Ty and I, we just moved into my brother's house. Like we all gathered
just to keep her company.
To keep each other company. It wasn't just for my mom, it was for all of us. Because you know, I wanted to be with my family, obviously, and then my mom couldn't sleep by herself anymore. She couldn't even go into their room anymore. We all just slept in a living room together on these like air mattresses, and we kept each other company for like the good 3 months, even after we did our funeral for my dad. There's 3 main things that I grieve about for my dad. The first one is my dad didn't even get to hold his first grandchild. That was so devastating to me when you know, my sister-in-law, she was getting induced, and my brother couldn't even be there to be at the hospital with my sister-in-law because he had COVID. And back then, like, they were very strict with COVID. Like, you could only have one person with you. So my sister-in-law had her mom, which was good. But yeah, no one could be there. No one could go visit her. And my sister-in-law's mom told me that when they were leaving the hospital, my dad and my mom met them in the parking lot. And my dad just got to see her for a little tiny bit. And then shortly after that, he went to the hospital. So, like, all these years, he had been waiting and waiting for a grandchild, and he couldn't get to hold his first grandchild. And that was the most heartbreaking thing for me, because that's what I looked forward to the most, was having my dad be a grandfather. He loved children so much, and he would have been such a good grandfather. Like, if he was still around, I know he would be here like every day, or he would come pick up Inara and he would go play with her because he just loved kids. And by the time by 2020, he was like retired, so he had all the time in the world. And so that was such a big loss to me, to the whole family, to be honest. And then the second, obviously, grieving for my mom, because he was her everything. Like, literally her everything. He drove her places. He would help translate for her. He took her shopping the last couple years. Like, they went traveling together. They went to Thailand together so many times. And like, my dad, all the money that he had made, he gave it to my uncle to build a house for him on my uncle's property in Thailand. And that was going to be their retirement home.
Aww.
They planted these trees, and my mom says she doesn't want to go back.
Yeah.
She's like, it's too sad.
Why would you? Yeah.
And like, me thinking about my marriage, you know, being together with someone for so many years, and then to not have them anymore. Yeah, I can't even fathom that.
That traumatized me. Like, to see my mom lose her life partner of 50-something years. I was like, I saw my mom, and I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go through that. I don't want to lose my best friend of my life. And I was like this close, like, I'm staying single forever. Literally, I was like, I'm afraid to be in that position. I already somewhat went through that. They're dating someone for 10 years. I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. It's just too much.
Yeah.
But no, I still believe in love. I still want to get married.
Yeah, like, same. Like, I was already married to Ty at that point, so like, it was impending. It's
really impactful seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah, and like, watching her and seeing her go through her trauma was so heartbreaking. And then,
Was that the third point or the second point?
That was the second point. Actually,
Okay.
there's 4 points, actually. The third point was my relatives.
Yeah.
Like, the second, like, my mom and my relatives, those are like where my anger out of grieving came from. Like, why are you guys treating this situation so lightly? Like, you guys are so inconsiderate of our feelings. Like, we just lost someone very dear to us. Don't try to come off as rational by telling us, you know,
It's too late for that.
right, what we need to do, what we should have done. It's like, just let us grieve in peace. Yeah, that's why I didn't want any of our relatives over. I'm like, that's fine, stay away, because I'd rather grieve with my family than deal with y'all's.
I think,
go ahead.
but I think some things I grieved after my dad passed away was just like, he will be here the day I get married. And that's something I'm really sad about because like my mom shares with us that all my mom, like one of my things my dad desired was a good son-in-law. And I couldn't even give him that while he was alive. And there's a whole thing with that because I was like with someone for so many years, and like one of the things I'm disappointed about, and so sometimes I like fantasize like my wedding day and how it would look like, and how I would still honor my dad on the day I get married. So yeah, I share that with her too.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna insert this, but even if like, yes, last year we lost like our father last year, I think life strangely works because my sister was pregnant like months later. Our dad passed away, and it turned out to be a boy who was born at the end of last year. And so like, although we lost our father, we were also blessed with this new boy in our lives, and we saw it as like, oh, it's a blessing from our dad. So
I can kind of say the same too, like,
and I was waiting for you to talk about that too.
Yeah, because like, I got pregnant in 2022. I gave birth to Inara the day after my dad's death anniversary. And like the whole time I was in the hospital, I was like, am I really going to give birth to this child on my dad's death anniversary? Like, how ironic is this? Like, I lost someone and now someone is coming into my life on the same exact day. It wasn't the same exact day, it was the day after, but I felt like it was kind of my dad's way, or like, this is how I want to see it, is like my dad saying, you know, this is his blessing, and that, you know, don't celebrate your loss, but celebrate your gain.
That really like made me remember during my birthdays this year, I went to Las Vegas to see Adele, and I was avoiding the weekend of my dad's anniversary, and somehow I had to land on the same anniversary. So I like initially had plans to be with my family that weekend, but I think it was like a blessing in disguise. It was this, I think it was like literally like my dad telling me to celebrate life instead of sadness and grief. So I was able to enjoy my time in Las Vegas. So yeah,
good.
So what are our coping strategies?
You know, right away, I don't think I did a really good job coping because
no one is ever prepared.
I know,
Let's just say that. No one is ever prepared. Do not blame yourself and how you cope. And yeah, like don't be so hard on how everyone's grieves differently. Is how I eventually learned even before I lost my dad. Like everyone grieves differently, and you just have to accept that.
I threw myself into work, but I was in therapy, so I went to therapy and I talked it out with my therapist, and eventually I taught myself to be grateful for the life that I had with him, not for the life that I didn't have with him, because that's out of my control. I remember all the good things that we had. I remember all the things that he left behind. I mean, because of my dad, we have this house, and because of my dad, I decided to be healthier and like work out more, and eventually I had Inara, and so all that just learning to be grateful really helped me with the coping. You know, every time I felt sad or like I missed him, I would in turn say thank you for giving me such good memories and for loving me and taking care of me. Yeah, and I think that's for the most part what helped me with my coping is just being grateful for everything.
Yeah. I'm not the type to do this, but thankfully I had work to turn to. Like I just started my new job, so I was like in the middle of adjusting to that and this new life I had. Coping. Oh my god, she knows this, but I had made so many bad decisions while I lost my dad. Like I was with people that I shouldn't have been, but it's like I didn't blame myself because like I was in the middle of grieving. So this is how I'm gonna process my life at the moment. Like I went through the stages of grief. Like I was upset one moment. Yeah, like but I think what I learned is that when grief hits you, just take it in. Like, so just accept it, because like you'll be like shopping and you think you're fine, and like then you remember something and then just like, you know what, I'm just gonna cry it out, I don't give a fuck. Just let it, like don't avoid it, don't push it away, let grief come to you. And that really helps, because that also like honors the person you loved. It's also remembering their life and remembering those good memories. So I just say welcome grief in.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I'm driving and I'll think of something and I'll start crying. How many nights, the first year of grieving, how many nights I woke up and I just started sobbing because I either had a dream about him or like it was something related to him. And so like just let it all happen. I think that's the best thing. Just let it all happen.
And don't put a timeline on it. Like do not, like, you don't expect yourself to get over a loss over a year. Like don't, like there's no timeline. You just take it as it is, and eventually when you begin living for yourself again and living life, focusing on life, like sometimes I feel bad though. Sometimes like I forgot that my dad passed away, because then I'm like living my life and then I'm like, oh shit, like I feel bad for that, but at the same time like, oh maybe I shouldn't, so yeah. And then it also took me a year after to finally go through therapy, so there's that too. Like I finally said, I think it was, I was having such a hard year, like because losing my dad, it activated a lot of like internal aggression, and even dealing with work, a stressful job. Like I started questioning how come I'm not handling issues the way I used to be, how I used to handle them. Like how come I'm not like processing things positively, anymore. Like, and not to put an expectation on like being positive all the time, but it was just like I'm not this person I used to be. And so that's when I was like, okay, I need to go therapy. I need to sort this aggression out because something's wrong. That's probably related to grieving. So yeah.
Well, one thing that I remember seeing, I think it was on Instagram or something, grief never changes, but the things around grief gets bigger. So it never like
was it the bookshelf one? No.
Maybe?
No, go on. I'll share about it later.
But like grief will always be there, and it'll always be like the same size, but like an optical illusion. The life that you build around that grief is what makes it feel smaller. And it's not that you're forgetting it or that it's diminished or it's like little. It's just that once you start living your life, it just hurts less. And that's why you keep going. That's why you keep processing. It's because you don't stop living because someone else stopped living. If you think about yourself, and if you were the one passing away, would you want your loved ones to stop living their lives? No, you would want them to continue.
Keep going on.
So
the one I saw was like, it's a bookshelf, right? And then one of the books is called Grief or Loss. But then eventually you start seeing other books being added on the bookshelf. And
that's
so
the same concept.
So like grief will always be there, but you can also add more books and chapters into your lives. So I thought that was beautiful.
That is beautiful.
Very beautiful. But I guess, how do you honor your dad to this day?
So his biggest quote that he used a lot was "Just do it." Nike.
Does he say it in English or does it is it
No, he says it in English.
His Hmong accent.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Yeah, exactly. Just do it. But yeah, like at a certain point in his life, he also realized that there's no time for BS. Like, if there's something you want, if there's something you want to do, just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't let fear hold you back, because fear will always be there, right? If you let fear conquer you, then you're never gonna know what's on the other side. So, you know, as much as people criticized him, as much as he stopped going to like family eateries and things like that, he didn't give a F. He was like, I'm trying to live my best life, so go live your best life too. Just do it. So that's how I feel like I'm honoring my dad. Like, I want to teach that to Inara. I'm still teaching it to myself. I want to teach it to you guys. Like, honestly, life is short, you know, and let's not be driven by fear per se. We should use it to be a catalyst. Like, let it be something that we use to help us move forward, not to hold us back.
How about that? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. How I honor my father, like, even the simplest, like, I think after, you know, during the grieving process, I was like just sharing stories about my dad and like sharing photos of him that I would find, and to honor my father actually. But I did release a photo book. And this book is dedicated to, I mean, it's my mother's story, but there's a little dedication about my father here. So, like, I honor my father through this way, and I'll honor my mother too at the same time. So, yeah. This actually started late 2019, and I'm just so happy that I can finally, like, throw it out there because it's been on the back burner for a while. So, but it is a photo book based on photos I took of my mom's and our family's, like, farmer's market journey. And the entries in here are basically just like my journal entries that I did back then, and it's just a document along the way of like just really how we all kind of endured during the pandemic too. So yeah, it's on Amazon and on my Blurb website, so hopefully I put it in the show notes. But yeah, I'm really happy that I captured photos of my dad, even like during the time he was still alive, and that is something I intentionally did because like I knew that my parents were gonna be around anymore, so I made it a thing to take photos of them because I know that compared to other people, they're probably not thinking about that and they're probably gonna have regrets later. So like I made sure that I would like not have any regrets, and that's I'm gonna like spend the time I have with them now and stuff. So yeah.
This is my copy.
Yes, it has to be signed.
Yes.
Autographed.
When she becomes famous, you know.
I think also like to celebrate our, you know, and honor our father's legacies too is like I've made it my purpose, life's purpose to like, I mean, document Hmong legacy, but also like because my dad was a refugee and he was part of the secret army, like I wanted like my mission to be like, hey, like us Hmong people did something impactful, and there's a legacy that we have to continue, and so I continue like my own legacy in honor of my parents and, you know, the Hmong people. So yeah. However that will look like. Okay. The idea is there. The actions are there. Okay.
Well, I mean, you know, hopefully we have many long years ahead of us, and
we will. What do you mean?
And yeah, we never know what new projects come up and how we will continue to represent the Hmong community and how we grow as Hmong individuals as well.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a baby daddy yet, but let's talk about your baby daddy. I know, horrible transition, but yeah, well, let's take a moment to take in what we just kind of processed in front of you guys. Thank you for sharing such vulnerable moments with your family.
Too.
Yes. I'm sorry for like crying and like snot all over the camera mic. But the hardest part is over ish. So Yeah.
Ish.
We continue to grieve.
Yes.
And love those who love us.
Exactly.
Sorry. Also to add with my father, like, I'm very spiritual too, so I feel like after he passed away, like, I mean, of course it was a very, it's sad, but also it was a very calm because I'm like, he's no longer suffering, right? And I think although my dad was alone when he passed away, I think I never get an angry or like scary in like experience after my dad, but I think I feel very protected by him and my grandma, so like I feel like his spirit just added on to who I am as a person. Oh, and also I think a month after, for my birthday I was supposed to get a tattoo last year, but then we got moved to the next month because of my dad passing away. But I got a tattoo. It's like a half Japanese mask and a samurai mask, and it basically was like no fear. So I think that like with all that happened, it helped me to just become more confident and fearless as a person. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree that with you. Like,
yeah,
even though it was kind of the freakish time, but like, the reason why I got mad was like, my dad is a protector. He loves me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he wouldn't do scary things like that to hurt me.
Yeah.
And like you said, he's probably just lost.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I mean, we could probably talk about our fathers forever. And that's part of the coping mechanism too, is talk about it.
Oh, because Brene Brown says, like, in order to diminish or lessen shame is literally just talking about it. The more you talk about it, the less it goes away. So
Yeah. So, I mean, if we're going to talk about fathers, I mean, I should mention my baby daddy, who is now a father. And what I wanted to do was just share reflection of how I've seen my husband grow as a father. And I guess in hopes that, I think for me personally, I try to remind myself to watch my husband.
watch.
Yeah, watch. What do I mean by this is I feel like often as mothers, we're so absorbed in our worlds because we're doing so many things. And so we tend to forget the people around us.
So you mean observe?
Yes,
Observe her husband.
Yes.
As a father.
From the moment Inara was born till now, I can tell how much he loves our daughter. And that reminds me of my dad, you know? Like, my dad always said that, he said this to Ty too, my daughter is like a precious little egg. If I drop her or anything, she's gonna crack and break. And so he told Ty to protect me like a little egg. And now that Ty has a little egg of his own, he completely understands, because Ty is so afraid of her getting hurt. He's so afraid of her crying and being sad that it breaks his heart. And I'm like,
no, don't make me cry.
Chill, dude.
Chill, dude.
Chill. Like, she's gonna be okay.
She's okay.
But yeah, it's so endearing because it makes you think of your dad. Like, your dad was afraid of hurting you and of you like getting hurt and breaking and things like that. And just watching Ty like reflect this, it's loving.
He's a girl's dad.
He is a girl dad. It's funny to see him like dress her up and like how he teaches her things. Like he doesn't give a crap like about color matching her outfits or anything like that. He just thinks that she's just cute no matter what. and maybe that's like the blindness of a father or whatever. Like she's just perfect no matter what. But I remember the moment that, as clear as yesterday, when they pulled her out of my stomach and they lifted her up.
Way to be graphic.
Well, of course, I didn't see that.
I was not prepared for that graphic.
I couldn't actually see them grab her out of me, but like they lifted her up, and Ty was right next to me, and we just like fell in love with her that instant. And looking at him, looking at her, and the following days after, how he held her and nurtured her, made me feel more grateful for him. Like, all the fears that I had prior to this, like, you're like, oh, I don't want him to be like a deadbeat dad. I don't want him to be like not hands-on, and like you have all these fears that he's not going to be the father or the dad.
Code word fears, right?
Yeah,
Anxiety.
right. Yeah. But the moment that I saw him love her and hold her, and he wanted to feed her, and he had never changed a baby's diaper until his daughter's. He said, I would only change my children's diapers. So, to me, I can clearly see how much he loves her and adores her. And, you know, we still have arguments about parenting. That's going to happen. But one thing that I know for sure is he wants the best for her. And knowing that makes me grateful for him and all that he's done for her. And I know that he's going to continue to love and support her. And, you know, I feel like there's a lot of things that's changing within him too. Like, he is now more than ever, he's really trying to push for communication, and he's really trying to do his best to help out around the house lately. And he still has a lot to learn about how to communicate with the girl, but now he has the next, 17 years to figure it out.
It's all in the beginning.
It's all in the beginning.
You're in it for the long run, my dude.
Yeah. Every time when I see them together, it's just really cute.
I'll share one. I think it's really cute that he sends her videos of photos of Inara to Xai when she's at work and stuff. So yeah.
Even though I asked for them.
Oh, you do?
I do.
Okay, just kidding. It's with prompt. Anyways. Dear future baby daddy, I'm waiting for you, and happy Father's Day to you too.
I guess I didn't put this in, but what are your expectations for a baby daddy?
It's interesting because I think before they become a baby daddy, there's expectations for me.
Yeah.
Right. Like, in order to be, first of all, baby daddy, it's like you need to make me feel safe, right?
Okay.
Safe and
put this on your resume.
Safe and protected and provided for, because then that shows me that you can provide and protect and be safe for a family too. You know.
Yeah.
Same. If we had share the same intentions, like what we both want in life, like to start a family, to be together, we have to be on the same page.
Yeah, for sure.
I never thought about this before, but yeah, I think someone who has worked on themselves too, because I strongly believe that like we shouldn't bring a child into this place until you've also done some inner work too, and we shouldn't pass on that trauma.
Yeah,
we're trying to end generational trauma, okay, my dude. So there's that. And someone I want, like, when I picture my future baby daddy, it's like I want someone who is willing to go and have fun with their kid. Go outdoors, go have fun, go to the park, share like quality time together. Yeah.
So Ty will never go outside with Inara. I bought her a pop-up shade, and he goes into the tent with her. But I will be the one who goes traveling and go outside with her, and then he'll be the one teaching her how to play video games and board games.
Yeah, how cute.
Yeah.
Father's Day is just as important as Mother's Day, and I think it takes the time for us to remember or even celebrate the people who brought us into this world. And unfortunately, the people don't have that kind of privilege either. Either it's a toxic parent or people who's left them, but it's okay. You make your own life how you want to. So
yeah, and I hope you have a father figure out there somewhere, even if they're not related to you. Yeah. Because it is important to have a male person in your life or like a masculine energy. Not necessarily male, but masculine energy. Someone who is, has that figure to like protect and love you.
Yeah. Very important. I think we had a lot of golden nuggets.
Yeah, we did.
In this episode.
I think my biggest key takeaway is that it just lost my head. So you can
it just lost head. No, but yeah, like I said, grief has no timeline. Just let it come to you naturally. Don't push it away, because it's detrimental. Like if you push it away, then like it's scary, because it's like you're not able to. There's no outlet for you to release such an energy, a very negative or like very sad energy. You need to let it out. That's the only way you can be healthy, or like for your own mental health well-being. Don't keep it all in. Right. It's really bad and detrimental.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I don't want to make this too long, but before COVID all happened, when I was going through my mental health thing, okay, the reason why I'm bringing this up is if you have a rough relationship with your dad or your parents right now, take this time to hash it out, because it might be too late. Whether or not you have a good relationship or you even want to mend your relationship with them, completely up to you, of course, but this is someone who brought you into life as well, and it's gonna stick with you until your dying days. So before COVID all happened, I actually sat my whole family down, and I had I tried to have a real heart-to-heart conversation with them. But of course, generational understanding and stuff like that made it really hard. But I allowed myself to be vulnerable to my dad when I was afraid to be. So take this time now to be vulnerable with your dad, and even if he doesn't reciprocate, just do it for yourself.
At least you have some peace.
Yeah, most importantly, so that you can have the peace. Yeah. Because they're not going to be 100% the perfect dad, and you're not going to be 100% the perfect child, but that doesn't mean you can't have peace.
So happy Father's Day to all you daddies out there. Daddies.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast today. It's quite an emotional one. And please, if you guys, have any stories that you guys want to share about us, happy, sad ones, we'll love to hear them. So comment in our podcast anywhere.
Tell us about your dad. Share one great memory of your dad. Just celebrate your dad with us. Yeah. All right. And if you haven't, subscribe, follow, listen, share about our podcast. It's everywhere. Everywhere. Hey, bye.